The Red River Campaign was the only campaign in that pivotal year of 1864 that the Union lost. And they didn't want to write about it. It was an embarrassment. And the South was in no position to brag on it because they were in the process of losing the war. So it sat for about a century. Only the locals appreciating it. And then research really started picking up with the centennial of the war. And a few historians have touched it. I've spent a lot of time on it just trying to figure out the nuances of it. And it's a campaign that needs to be studied. I was writing this book on the Red River Campaign, and I kept on coming up with things that would work, but I wasn't really happy with it. And then I found this wonderful quote from General William Tecumseh Sherman, who wanted to lead this campaign for the Union. And he had another assignment that sent him toward Atlanta. And a reporter, and he didn't get along with reporters well, not at all, but a reporter asked him, "General, what do you think about that Red River campaign when it had just completed?" And he said, "One damn blunder from beginning to end." And I knew that that was it. The Red River campaign of 1864 was one of the major Union thrusts to try to end the war. And unlike all of the others, which were heading from the core of the Mississippi Valley, either northeast or southeast, this one was going in the wrong direction. It was going in the northwest. And everything on paper shows that this campaign should not have occurred. There are some specific goals that they tried to achieve, none of which they did. It was designed to take out an existing Confederate army operating in northwest Louisiana and in eastern Texas, the Army of Western Louisiana. It was designed to take the Confederate capital of Louisiana, which was at Shreveport. It had a naval base. It had the military headquarters. It had the legislature for Louisiana. All good reasons to take this place. But when the thrust of the war is moving across the heartland to the east, and you've got an army going in harm's way to the northwest, it doesn't really make much sense. So why did they do it? Political pressure, an absolute political need, economic pressure, and both of these trumped the military imperative. The political need was because President Lincoln wanted to and believed, upon receiving a lot of intelligence information, that he could repatriate, to bring back into the Union Louisiana and maybe even Texas without a lot of problems. They had had great success at New Orleans. They had had great success at Baton Rouge. Very minimal effort. Loss of life was very small. And they thought that perhaps Shreveport would be the same way. Didn't work out that way. Members of President Lincoln's cabinet were telling him that if they could just get an army into Texas, that the German immigrants would then do a counter-revolution and take the state back into the Union. President Lincoln really wanted this. He's looking forward to the fall elections of 1864. He needed friendly faces in Congress. He's got some problems with certain segments of the Republican Party, and so that's number one, has to be. The second thing is that in New England, there are hundreds of thousands of spindles in the textile factories that are not working. The looms are not making cloth. There are lots and lots of people, particularly in Massachusetts, that are out of work because they cannot get the cotton fiber to make the cloth, and that's what they did. And so President Lincoln is looking at a way to increase employment, again, anticipating the fall elections. The general that he has put as the head of the Department of the Gulf in New Orleans is Nathaniel Prentiss Banks, who is from Waltham, Massachusetts. Long, long history of working in cotton mills, textile mills, working with bankers. He's very popular in the Northeast, arguably in that segment more popular than President Lincoln. And Banks wants to run for the presidency, at least for the Republican nomination for that fall election. For him, it's do or die for a political career. And he has had a pretty good political career. He's three-term governor of Massachusetts. He was former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. It makes sense for him to want to be president, and he certainly wants to. Banks has had a problem securing a military victory. Every time he tries, something happens. He's a political general. He's not a good field commander. He has some good people under him, and on paper, this whole campaign looks like it is guaranteed to win. If you don't understand the geography, if you don't understand what he's up against, if you simply look at his plan, the Red River campaign should be, as he said, 3 bounds. 1 bound to the Red River, a 2nd bound to Alexandria in the middle of the state, and the 3rd bound to Shreveport with no opposition. Didn't work. So, how did it happen? Beginning in late 1863, Banks has made several attempts to try to get into Texas, and they have all had problems. Banks is getting pressure from Washington, from the Chief of Staff, Major General Henry Halleck, to go up Red River, do something. The president wants it. And so he does. He's going to plan this wonderfully intricate thing. He doesn't have full command of all of his forces. Washington does not allow him to have that. He is a department commander, but he's got to bring people from other places, other commands. He has an overall command, but he doesn't have specific command. He cannot order certain segments of his force to go from point A to point B. There are going to be people coming down from Arkansas. There are going to be others coming down the river with the Navy and then coming up, and then he has his own folks. He will have 42,500 men under his overall command. They are not all in the same place. They're going to be in 3 separate legs. Second thing is that the Navy, the U.S. Navy, is going to bring in the vast bulk of its brown water or inland Navy, which is the Mississippi Squadron under Admiral David Dixon Porter. Porter is a friend of General Sherman's, and General Sherman thought that he was going to lead this. So when the Navy commits, it's going to be Porter to Sherman. Then when Sherman is forced to back out, Porter's caught. He has to come. Now, this river that Shreveport is on, the Red River, is long, thin, muddy, silty, and in 1864, it was relatively shallow. About 9 feet would be a good constant idea of the depth. And so Admiral Porter is going to bring up vessels that have drafts of from 5 to 9 feet, meaning that his heavy ironclads are going to scrape the bottom of the river as they come up. That is not a good way to operate a force. And he's going to bring 104 vessels up the Red River. These 104 vessels are marvelous in their complexity and in their ability to project firepower. But it is very much a case of a river too shallow, too far, and how do you get them out when they get into trouble? And they will get into trouble. So beginning March 10th of 1864, with plans written out thoroughly, but 400 miles distant from the different points of the legs, the campaign begins. General Sherman has loaned 10,000 men, veterans all from the Mississippi Valley campaigns, to really protect the Navy from being abandoned. And they leave Vicksburg, come down to the mouth of the Red River, have trouble coming into the Red River. Once they cross the bar at the mouth, they then ascend rapidly. They come upon a fort that was built 2 years before by the Confederates. It was designed to hold upwards of a division, maybe 5,000 men. There are only 200 men, between 200 and 300 men in it. That's Fort DeRussy. And they're going to take this pretty easily. Sherman's men are going to sneak in behind the fort while the Navy's going to try to pound it from the beginning. And although the papers in New York and Washington and Philadelphia really describe this as an Armageddon-like battle, it's more of a skirmish. They then make a leap forward, and they send one of their ironclad monitors, the Osage, on upriver to Alexandria, right in the middle of the state. And Alexandria falls without a shot to this very formidable ironclad. The captain of it, Lieutenant Commander Selfridge, sends a courier back by boat to Admiral Porter saying, please come up here. They don't know that they could take this vessel. As they get into Alexandria, Porter is waiting around for Banks, who's supposed to be there. Banks is nowhere to be seen. There's no communication. There's no open telegraph lines. It's all by boat. And we start seeing the whole campaign begin to become threadbare at that point. Also, Porter is rather amazed that the water in the river's falling, and he writes his friend Sherman a 16-page letter. He says, I do not understand why, when all the streams in this region are booming, and he capitalizes each letter. He underlines it 3 times. The red is falling, sometimes an inch an hour, sometimes an inch a day. He has no clue, and he never will, to the day he dies, understand what the Confederates are doing to him. Still no Banks. Where's Banks? Banks has decided not to come up with his men marching across South Louisiana. He is delaying as he inaugurates the new Union governor, Michael Hahn, who had been a Union senator from Louisiana. And he's just fastidious with all of these wonderful goings-on, trying to show that Louisiana is going to be a fine Union state. At the same time, 20,000 of his men are slogging across South Louisiana. They go by rail from Algiers across from New Orleans to what is today Morgan City, then Brazier City, by rail. And then they have to march through those South Louisiana swamps, buckshot, black dirt gumbo. My grandmother used to call it grow taller mud because you walk through it and it sticks to your shoes and you grow taller. They march all the way across to the little bitty town of Washington, and today in St. Landry Parish, and was then. And then from there, they head northeast to Alexandria. And it takes them a week to do it. It's miserable. It's raining. The roads are bottomless. And the men get muddy. And Banks has given them orders that they will not go into a city if they look bad. So they have to stop and clean themselves up. Banks is not a military man. They march into Alexandria 7 days after Admiral Porter. And they look good. And Sherman's men, who are all Westerners and look like they're Westerners, and their uniforms are mended, and they just don't look good, but they are really prodigious fighters. They think that these Eastern guys have had an easy time of it. And there's a lot of animosity between the Easterners and the Westerners. Banks floats in on a boat called the Black Hawk. And that was not a good move because that was the name of Admiral Porter's flagship. And Admiral Porter thinks he did it because it's an insult. Banks had no clue. Also waiting for Banks is a letter from General Grant, now taking over as the commander of Union forces. And he says, Banks, you will go to Shreveport or you will not go to Shreveport. If you take it, fine. If not, you're going to stop. You're going to come back. You're going to leave just enough men to garrison what you have, and you and the bulk of your force will go east, and you will take Mobile because you have to protect General Sherman on his campaign to take Atlanta, to protect the flank. There's a Confederate army operating around Mobile, and the Union does not want to have to deal with that coming in behind or on Sherman's flank or his side. And so it's an important mission. Well, Banks ignores it. He sends a letter to the president and to General Grant separately saying, things are going great. I'm going to take Shreveport and I'm going to be in Texas. He has specifically been told not to go into Texas. And Grant is going to go ballistic, and General Halleck is going to go ballistic. And President Lincoln has in the notes of his secretaries, Nicolay and Hay, has the most interesting and telling comment, perhaps. He says, every time I have had a general who has told me that things are going so well, there has been a disaster. And I fear that we will have one now. What are the Confederates doing? We hadn't talked about the Confederates. You can't have a war unless there's at least two sides. The Confederates are based out of Shreveport and west of the Mississippi River, and being run or operated out of Shreveport is the Army of Western Louisiana. And if you put every Confederate under arms that would be available, you could have about 25,000 men. There will never be more than 12,000 on a field at one time. Commander of the department is three-star General Lieutenant General Edmund Kirby Smith. He's a native of Florida. He had had a sort of a checkered career, but well thought of. He had operated with Braxton Bragg in Kentucky in that invasion. He had been sent down to Louisiana to stabilize things and make sure that Banks wasn't going to succeed. He arrives in March of 1863, and he has almost exactly 1 year to prepare. He builds forts. He's a mud mover. He loves to build forts, and he builds some really fine ones up and down the Red River Valley. Under him, he has three department commanders, and the local commander in what is termed the District of Western Louisiana, Louisiana west of the Mississippi River, is a Major General, 2 stars, Richard Taylor, son of President Zachary Taylor, brother-in-law through his first marriage of President Jefferson Davis, graduate of Yale, tremendously intelligent, one of the finest tactical commanders that the Confederates have in the war. Kirby Smith and Richard Taylor do not get along. Every time Kirby Smith does something that Taylor believes is dumb, he tattles on him. Taylor spent his time getting ready. He's built supply depots with the help of a Creole black man named Carroll Jones in western Louisiana. And he can supply his forces if they can get to them. As Banks and Porter come up the river, Taylor has ordered his far-flung forces, and they are far-flung, all the way from the Mississippi River across North Louisiana, and also in Texas, all the way from the Texas line just west of Shreveport down to Matagorda Bay. Everybody gets together. Come. It's a gathering. So it takes a while for these forces to come. They're resupplied. They're ready. Nobody believed that the Yankees could move that quickly, and they did. And so every time the Texans try to come across at a predetermined point, the Yankees are already ahead of them. So it's like a big race. One side coming up the Red River, which is the Union, the Texans coming up what is today the equivalent of Highway 59, US 59 in Texas. And they will cross over into Louisiana at Logansport in DeSoto Parish. Louisiana troops have come from central Louisiana and northeast Louisiana back to the northwest, and the Texas infantry under Walker have been in the south part of the Red River Valley, and they come up. Although no one realizes it at the time, everybody's shadowing the Union, and the Union has no clue. And in fact, the Confederates really probably do not have a clue. Taylor knows that if he can fight as close as possible to Shreveport and still protect it, he'll do his job. He can get people to come in. He doesn't have to worry about a long supply line. And so he picks the place. Banks stupidly comes up one long road, and he's going to find that when he gets away from the river and the big guns of the Navy, which he will do, that there's only one road that he can use. And he will accordion this long column out to 30 miles. And that's not the way to run a military campaign. Taylor knows that at the little town of Mansfield, about 40 miles south of Shreveport, that single road then breaks into 3 roads, and Banks will have 3 avenues of approach. So he's going to stop him at Mansfield. It's going to be an Armageddon-like do-or-die battle for the Confederate command, and although the Union does not understand it, for them as well. So Taylor marshals his forces and begins to work on his plan. Kirby Smith in Shreveport doesn't even come down to see what Taylor is doing. Banks finally decides to move forward out of his encampment in Alexandria, and he and Porter moved their forces together along the river and in the river, of course, for the Navy, up to Natchitoches. The port for Natchitoches is a little place called Grande Corps, Big Bluffs, 120-foot high sheer cliffs, and that's where they decide what they're going to do. Porter is amazed that the river is falling, and he has to leave a lot of his heavy vessels in Alexandria, and also he's going to have to leave a bunch of them at Grande Corps. What's happening is that the Confederates, anticipating that the Navy would come up, had built a dam in a side channel, in an ancient channel of the Red River called Bayou Pierre. And this side channel is called Tone's Bayou, and so they had prepared a trap, a very elegant trap. Shreveport will have water. Once they blow this dam, the Red River will be diverted through the side channel into Bayou Pierre, and the Red River will fall. What Porter is seeing when he sends that letter to Sherman is that the dam's working, or the blown dam is working, and the water is pooling up to the west, and his vessels are about to be high and dry if he's not careful, and he will not be able to extract them. Porter will go as far north as just above the southern line of Bossier Parish, due east of Caddo, where we are. And he will come within about 2 miles, maybe, of Tone's Bayou. And the Confederates have placed a large steamboat across the river, and it blocks it. That's the New Falls City. And they left a placard in the mud that says that Admiral Porter is now invited to a ball in his honor at Shreveport. Porter thinks it's hilarious. He can't move this vessel and there he sits for a little bit, waiting to figure out what to do. Back to Banks. Banks marches inland, away from this welcoming set of large naval goods. He moves due west on the old El Camino Real, the Spanish Royal Road, for about 12 miles. And then he cuts. His maps show that he can do this. His maps are somewhat wrong. And then he cuts to the northwest on what is today Louisiana Highway 120. And then he moves north on the old Natchitoches to Shreveport Stagecoach Road, which is Louisiana Highway 175. And he starts seeing Confederates, cavalry, Texans under Tom Green who have arrived. And they just sort of slow them down. It's not a, they're not going to bring on a battle, but they do delay them. On the morning of April 8th, 1864, the Union column sets out again and moves the last miles until they come to another small stream called Chapman's Bayou, and this one's even smaller than 10 Mile. They run through a set of woods, another set of woods, a couple of open pastures, and then they're at the bottom of a toe-shaped ridge called Honeycutt Hill. And there the Confederate cavalry is prepared to fight them, they think. Union cavalry up front of the main column sets up line of battle, and then the Confederates leave, and they ride over this hill. So the on-scene commander, Brigadier General Albert Lindley Lee, head of the cavalry division, and his staff, and some of the other staff of infantry, go up to the top of this. And Lee reports, I see before me every Confederate seemingly west of the Mississippi River. They bend to my left as far as I can see. They bend back from the road ahead of me to my right. From tip to tip, it's 3 miles. Indeed, there's probably 12,000 men there. The most that the Union can put on the field is 7,200 because they can't get past the wagons that Banks had put in front of his infantry. Again, Banks is not a military man. And the Confederates under Taylor and the Union under a tactical commander, T.E.G. Ransom, Brigadier General, and another Brigadier General, that's General Lee, Albert Lindley Lee, face each other for 4 hours. And then at 4 p.m., no daylight savings time, the Confederates know that the Union will just bring up more men. They finally attack. The attack is designed to follow their initial placement, which is an L. And the idea is to have a hinge, and the Confederates will close the hinge, middle of it being the road, and the Yankees in the middle of it, Union forces in the middle. And instead of doing this, they are going to do that. It's going to slow them down, and the Union will be able to get out. It is a meat grinder. The Battle of Mansfield will last about 3 hours. The Confederates will lose about 1,000 men. The Union forces missing, killed, wounded, in excess of 2,000 men. The fighting ends with the Confederates pushing the Union forces back 3 miles. Night ends it. The woods are on fire. Nobody can see what's going on. Taylor captures 262 of Banks's wagons. Banks withdraws 17 miles back to Pleasant Hill. Taylor thinks that Banks is right in front of him. He plans a battle for that geography, not 17 miles distant. But that's where it's going to be fought. The Battle of Pleasant Hill will be fought the next day, 24 hours later, beginning at 4 p.m. It will last for 4 hours. This will be a strategic tie. This is hard fighting. Sherman's seasoned veterans, many of them write letters, and they say that They had never seen fighting like that. And indeed, it was horrific. Taylor has his much cut up Louisiana troops, and he has his Texas cavalry. And they will pursue Banks. Banks will retreat back to Grand Ecore, and there he will fortify himself for a few days. Admiral Porter will suffer greatly from Confederate artillery, and many of his vessels will be riddled. General Tom Green and his Texans will try to catch the Navy at a place called Blair's Landing, and they will fight the most unusual battle perhaps in the Civil War. 2,500 mounted Texas cavalry against an ironclad monitor, the Osage, and some support vessels. Very few casualties. This is April 12th, 1864. First time the periscope is ever used in battle aboard the Osage. It had just been invented a couple of days before. And one of the few casualties is General Tom Green. The Osage fires a round from their 11-inch Dahlgren guns, huge naval guns. And they fire high, but one of the canister rounds, or grape rounds, takes off a part of his head, just the side of it, and he falls dead. His body's taken back to Austin for a state funeral. It was a huge loss for the Confederate cavalry and for Taylor, because Tom Green was a very fierce fighter. There's a lot of mourning on both sides due to the amount of death. Taylor does not have enough men to capture Banks's force. Banks does not have the will to go forward. He goes back to Alexandria. The Navy limps back in after losing 4 vessels to Confederate artillery. And the water is so low that it's just barely puddles. Porter reports that there's a stretch of water in front of him that's 20 feet wide and 1 foot deep. You can't get warships out. The Navy will be saved by a Wisconsin colonel, Joseph Bailey, who knows how to do logging. And he builds dams, raises the level of the water, and the Navy boats are going to shoot out through it. Banks is despondent. He also finds in Alexandria that he's been fired, and he's going to be a pencil pusher for the rest of the war. As the Navy is able to leave Alexandria through this torrent of water from the pent-up dams, Porter gets out and just will not, he's so happy to get out he can't stand it. Alexandria was burned to the ground and had to rebuild. As Banks's men leave, they burn it to the ground. It'll be the only major city in Louisiana that gets the same kind of destruction that Georgia gets. Shreveport, second largest city in Louisiana, will be a banking center, a trading center, an agricultural center. It will get that position and hold it until the 1970s. It will call itself the Queen City of the Southwest. And it will, in effect, have that position simply because that army was able to save it.